Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Mike is on.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Is that better?
Yep, thank you.
Commissioner Leitner? Here. Commissioner Wells?
Here.
Commissioner Rice? Here. Commissioner Duckham? Commissioner Tompkins?
Here.
Commissioner Mahoney? Commissioner Williams? Commissioner Elwell?
Here.
Chairman Shotwell.
Here. Public comment. Public comment. Each individual will state their name. They have 3 minutes to address the board. You may only address the board under this public comment opportunity and may not yield your time to others. Board members will not debate nor answer questions at this time. Public comment is now open. Public comment. Public comment is now closed. Entertain approval of the minutes of the April 3rd meeting.
So moved.
We have a motion and support. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Approval of the minutes of May 1st meeting.
So moved.
We have motion and support. Any questions or comments? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, duly carried. Is this the third or fourth or fifth year in a row? We have a resolution before us to forward to the full Board of Commissioners, or is this actionable item, Mr. Overton?
Action, please.
I would move the resolution as written.
We have a motion and support. Any questions to the resolution? I would ask upon the vote being completed, the administrator speak to this a little bit and tell us where we're at. Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Can I post?
You may post.
Okay, thank you.
I didn't either. There it is.
Never got the screen.
If you go to your main, if you go to Board Docs there, it should show up. There you go.
Thank you.
Williams, you said yea?
Resolution passed unanimously. Mr. Overton.
Yes, sadly, this has become a common occurrence. SRI bond payments due July 1. By June 1st, we should have received something from Leone. So we anticipate making a $361,000 payment on their behalf. The total, just for the benefit of the record and the audience, is $1.4 million that the county has paid on this bond on behalf of Leone and the other townships. That doesn't include any fees or fines or penalties or anything. That's just what we paid. Currently, it's still in court. There has been some movement. More recent, the judge has appointed a special master to, what's the better choice of words? This person will basically listen to everyone. It's almost like another judge. We'll listen to everyone. This is a very lay person, non-attorney here. We'll listen to everyone, read the briefs, make a recommendation to the judge, and then we'll see what the judge does with that. The expectation is, from my perspective at least, and that of our attorney, is that his recommendation is going to fall pretty much in line with what our thinking is, because the judge has basically appointed this person to figure out what each township owes, not whether they owe. The judge has pretty much said, hey, you guys owe the money, you're using the sewer pipe, you need to pay for it. And then he appointed a special master to kind of figure out what that is, which is sounds simple enough, but it's really not. So then there could potentially be fighting about that once the special master gets done. In the end, though, at this point, unless another judge says otherwise, those 4 townships do have an obligation to pay. It's just a matter of what that will be. Questions?
What's the name of what's the judge call?
Special Master?
Special master.
Mike, who did he appoint as special master?
That's out of order.
You know what? I don't remember the name, to be frank.
Mike? What we just voted on, that was the judge's ruling, correct?
No, this is actually per the contract we have with those parties. It basically says that Leone will pay the county by 30 days in advance of the payment, which is July 1st, the money. So we have it in our account and ready to pay. They don't do it, so we end up having to do a resolution, basically declaring them in default once again, and making necessary adjustments to our own budget to make that payment.
But this is what the judge said in regards to those 4 townships, okay, have to pay their fair share as determined by this special master, correct?
Yes, for all intents and purposes.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mike, I may have missed it, but what are we, about 1.3 million in now?
We're 1.44 right now, and that is just the bond payments themselves. You can add another 140 or so thousand on top of that with the 1% penalty, but our out-of-pocket's about 1.4, just over.
Well, it's the bond payment and the interest payments, right? And then,
yeah.
but not the penalty.
Right, that's
Okay.
right. That's bond and interest payment. It's the bond payment. There's principal and interest.
Right. Thank you.
You're next.
Kristen. Next up, we have our grant writer. She's going to come up and give you a little verbal update as to what she's accomplished this last year.
Good morning. I just want to take a few moments, like Mike said, to update you on what's been going on in this new position. The position I started last April, so it's been just over a year. In that time, I have, for new grant monies, we've applied for 1.29 million. Of that, we've received 255,000 of that. To give you a little perspective, I once, a long time ago, I don't know from where, but I had heard that grants, you generally receive about 10 to 20% of the grants that you apply for, because there's competition, and the funders are looking, be it state or federal or local funders, are looking for the right fit for their organization. You generally get about 10 to 20% of the funds that you apply for. That number, the 255 and the 1.29 million, is 19%. So we're within there. I'd like to see more. With more probably means we need more to find more opportunities. So over the next year, that's kind of a goal. A notable grant that we received that hasn't been received in the past was the MDAR, the Michigan Department of Agriculture and Rural Development, for the fair. The fair had applied for that for a couple different years. But when I came in last year, Denise had just received notification that they didn't receive it. And she's like, why are we not receiving this? Well, this year we got it. It was for $40,000 for an ADA accessible ramp at the fairgrounds for the grandstands. Couple comments that have been given by the reviewers of the grants we put in and received. One said high-quality grant application. One said well-written, one of the top five proposals. So, not to toot my own horn, but just, those are good things. That's what we want to see. A lot of my time right now and over the past year has been spent on researching what's opportunity, researching the county itself. There's a lot of different areas that funding can be used or it would be needed, but my job and my role has been figuring that out and then researching grant opportunities from federal, state, local levels to determine where we can search, and then if opportunities come up, and just increasing my knowledge based on exactly what's out there, because if I know what's out there and I'm researching all these different opportunities, then when someone comes and says, hey, we need $40,000 for an ADA ramp, or, you know, whatever that program or need is, then, you know, I can say, oh, but I saw that. And so I have a list, and we're, you know, continuing to expand on that, and, you know, with deadlines and finding out, you know, because we've got to find the right fit and the right opportunity to increase that, so. My next step over the next year, like I mentioned earlier, is just to increase those numbers, so hopefully, you know, next year we can double it, or, you know, it's hard to give an exact number without knowing what people are asking for, but to increase those numbers and increase the new funders that are giving to the community.
I may jump in just to add to, you know, we initially set it up for 2 years. Reason being, we recognize that the first year, you know, there's some startup time that is involved. I got to say, she's done very well, hit the ground running, and knowing what she costs, I can tell you she's generated 5 times what she's cost. So I'm very pleased about that. We are looking for obviously more for this this next year. And what I think is also important to note is, you know, all the department heads and folks that are writing grants or who would normally write grants, you know, they're running pretty hard already in their departments, day-to-day operational stuff. So when a grant opportunity comes up, you know, you want to believe that, oh, well, there's a grant opportunity, I'm going to jump all over that. Well, truth be told, you know, when you're up to here working hard, you may not have the time. So Kristen joins and assists. She can't necessarily do it all for them. She doesn't know their department like they do, and this or that. But yet at the same time consults with them and does the bulk of the workload, if you will, the writing and things like that. So I think there's a great opportunity and continued great opportunity there. And of course, we'll evaluate again next year and see how we're doing. But questions?
Mike?
Yes, sir.
How much did you apply for again?
1.29 million,
Okay, and how much did you get?
255,000.
Okay. And Mike, where does that 255 go?
It goes to whichever department the grant was for. Give them an example.
Well, like I mentioned, the fair, or the fair 40,000. So it's going to the fair and it can only be used for the specific funds that are outlined in developing that. For that one, it's the ADA accessible ramp. Another one, just real quick, is we received $50,000 from Blue Cross Blue Shield Community Matching Grant Program, and it was for the Teen Pregnancy Prevention Initiative, their teen outreach program. So they had an expansion of their program. So it's actually new programming that was brought in, so they could expand what they were already doing.
And that's something important to note too. There's some grants, like we'll say the one at the fair, in all honesty, that is money that sooner or later the county, if you will, if you include us all, the fair, all of us together, the county would eventually have to deal with that ramp situation for ADA. You know, if we're going to continue in that business, and we'd eventually have to pay for that. So, I mean, really, that grant is money that we just didn't have to pay for. Now, the Blue Cross one, that expansion of the program was probably, my guess is here, and I'm not, you jump in, but my guess is it's expansion of a very needed programming, you know. You said pregnancy prevention?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm a fan of that. but inside joke, sorry. But now you
Keep digging, Mike.
I'll say no more. Moving on.
I would like to compliment Christy on the hard work that she's done. We had a program, the SISMA, couldn't get it off square one. We're talking about a tri-county program that our conservation district now is making sure is handled. There's a staff person in place. It's a program to help deal with invasive species going forward, and I really want to thank you. We tried to apply for that 3 times, and couldn't get anywhere. And she got on board, and with her professionalism, we were able to receive that award, and I think that we're really moving in the right direction with that program. That's very important for Jackson. I thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Rand, I'd like to invite you, I'm not going to let Mr. Overton speak anymore, to the microphone, please.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Here before you today to ask you to consider updating our permits for our transportation permits. A little background on it, the County Road Association of Michigan has been working for the last 2 years to update their recommendations for the permits for the entire state. There has been some pressure from Lansing to help make these permit fees consistent across the state. There has been some agencies that have tried to utilize the permits as a revenue stream, and some were absorbent. We were not in that category at any time. And our current permits are close to what CRA is recommending. There's 3 changes to our existing ones, rather than go through the entire one unless you'd like me to. The 3 changes are, we currently have, or recommended changes are, we have what they call single move and a round trip. Currently, we charge $50 for a single move, $75 for a round trip. CRA has recommended across the state that they go to $25 for a single move, $50 for the round trip. There's in lieu of that, there's an extra permit for a move that is they refer to as a super load. We currently have 6 super loads going through Jackson County. That's every other county involved in this move gets $100 for this move, which and the current one's 160 feet long and weighs 400,000 pounds. To put that, a typical semi has a maximum length of about 80 feet and 80,000 pounds. This is a significant size. Takes extra risk. There can be some disruptions in flow. So CRA found that should be handled differently than the mobile home manufacturer that's bringing, a home to a community. So that one is new to us. The other change would be we currently charge $250 for an entire trucking company's fleet for hauling oversized equipment. And records, we had one company last year that had, I think, right around 80 drive units, paid $250. Where the large majority of our companies have 1 or 2 drive units. So our local companies with 1 or 2 units are paying $250 a year for these permits, where an very large out-of-town company is competing with them locally and paying the same amount for 80 trucks. CRA has recommended that this go to a $100 per drive unit. And those would, I think they would balance out, and personally, I believe that's a fair way to evaluate it, so all companies are equal. If we did this, we'd be in line with 70 other of the counties in the state, and it is also the recommendation from the legislature that they all be consistent, and that's why I'm here before you today for those changes.
Dave?
Mike, it's all just permits and fees for over-the-road type permits, nothing to do with driveway permits or culvert permits or anything like that, correct?
Correct. I separated those all one. There are a lot to tackle, so I felt that 1 year at a time on these was a fair way.
Are they talking about doing all the other permits at some point in time too, or not?
They are. There's always changes. Last year's recommendations that you approved came on CRA's recommendation as well. They weren't as holistic as these, but they basically weighed in and said that our recommendations were compliant with their direction.
Any other questions? Is this an actionable item, or is this going on to committee?
I'd send it to regular committee.
Thank you, sirs.
Okay?
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
When you say units, do you mean like a single 18-wheeler? Or the double-decker that's got one and another one attached to it?
I missed the first part of that, Doctor.
When you said we're talking about,
Turn your microphone on, please.
when you were talking about the units, okay, is there a difference between the single 18-wheel big trailer or the one that's got that and another one attached to it, a double trailers?
As far as the permits are, they're attached to the drive unit, which is the tractor and that assembly.
Okay.
As long as the following units fall within state law and guidelines, they don't require a permit. It's when they become wider than the state law. State allows 8 feet 6 inches wide. So if they go to 10 feet wide, they need to get a permit because it creates other issues with the road. And if they go beyond the 80 feet, then they have to get permits for longer loads.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Thanks. Any other items or questions? We return to public comment.
Just address the SRI for a moment. A special master is appointed by a court to deal with a particular issue within a case, and they essentially function as a judge. They make the recommendation to the court. The court, of course, does not have to follow it. But I would think that the identity of the special master and their educational background or their legal background would be of interest to the commissioners. And I would think that that information would be something that you would offer to the other commissioners and to the audience. Thank you.
Any other public comment? Any other public comment? Public comment's now closed. Commissioner comments. Commissioner Leitner.
You may have heard, we announced a special event at the fair this fall on October 6th at 9 o'clock in the evening. We are going to host Here Come the Mummies at the fairgrounds in one of our barns. We're also going to have a haunted barn. We're still looking for volunteers for the haunted barn itself, but as far as the Here Come the Mummies tickets, those tickets go on sale on June 9th, and you can get them at the fair office or etix.com or calling the fair office.
Any other commissioner comments? We are adjourned.